Hi everyone, I'm going to try and speak to you for just 10 minutes, if I can, about my thesis research, the title of which is Exploring the Application of a Capabilities Approach to Educational Psychology to Promote Inclusion. So to start off, just to think a little bit about what is the capabilities approach. I imagine it's pretty novel to most people. First and foremost, it's a framework for thinking about and assessing well-being and quality of life. It originates in sort of the field of international development and was developed by these two guys you can see on the right, Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. I put in these two questions because I think it helps put it into context. So for Sen, he says we all agree that equality is a good thing. So what we need to ask is, what is it that we want equality of? So this is his equality of what question. And Martha Nussbaum kind of extends that when she says, when we want to understand people's quality of life or how well they're doing, we should be asking, what is each person actually able to do or to be? So for the capabilities approach, instead of asking how happy or satisfied people are, we should focus on what real opportunities people have to be or do certain important things that we think are essential. And that's what capabilities are, these beings and doings. Sen doesn't really say what exactly those should be, just that should be the thing that we focus on when we're thinking about well-being. But Martha Nussbaum sets out this kind of list of 10 central capabilities as a kind of starting point for thinking about what the basic minimum threshold for decent quality of life should be. I obviously don't have time to go through them in detail, but I thought it was important that you know they exist because I base a lot of my research on them. So education researchers and theorists out there in the literature are increasingly interested in the capabilities approach in relation to inclusive education. Particularly, this has to do with the way that it conceptualizes diversity and by extension how it conceptualizes disability. Hopefully this diagram will help me to explain that to you. So capabilities are just means being able to be or do something, as we've said. So in this example, traveling by bicycle is an example of a capability, and people differ from each other in the things that they're able to do and be. So for example, some people can ride a bike and some people can't. In capability terms, what this means is people differ from each other in their ability to convert a resource, for example, a bicycle, into that capability. So these are called conversion factors, which is just a bit of jargon really, which means the difference between people and their ability to convert a resource into a capability. And these could be at the personal level, could be social factors, or could be environmental factors that all contribute to that capability. What also matters is in the capabilities approach is that we should be thinking about well-being in that space of capabilities, in what people have the opportunity to be or do, not necessarily what they end up actually doing. Choice, agency are really important. So in capability terms, a disability means a lack of functioning. A person is not able to do or be something they value or would choose to do because of some absence of a necessary conversion factor to be able to do that. So disability can arise through physical limitations, but also through social or environmental factors. You might be guessing this why it's interesting to inclusion, because it seems to bring together some of those social and medical models of understanding. There are other reasons why the literature, inclusive education literature, suggests that we would be interested in this. I don't have time to go through now. So the aims of my research were to explore the way that these theoretical concepts might be actually applied in practice, and I chose to focus on consultation as the aspect of practice. Those are my research questions there. To do this, I adopted a reflective practitioner approach, so incorporating aspects of action research within a multiple case study framework. I gathered qualitative data that was used both to inform the development of a consultation approach, but also to analyse the impact of a consultation approach that I'd created. The research had two phases, and in phase one, I used data gathered through participatory focus groups with pupils to develop a consultation framework I'm calling the capabilities profile. And in phase two, the data I collected helped me to answer the research questions. This slide gives you a sense of phase one look like. Put it really simply, the pupils were asked to respond to the question, what does a good life look like? I then went away and analysed what they told me and their drawings with the 10 central capabilities in mind. And then represented them to the pupils in the second session, where I prioritised them using this kind of diamond ranking activity. And this helped me to develop the capabilities profile, which is a consultation framework. a bespoke version of each one for each school based on the priorities of pupils in each school. And that's what they look like. This could then be used as a structure for the discussion during the consultation, and I also had some consultation questions that went along with each of those areas. This should give you an idea of how I used it. So we sort of talked through a child thinking about each of those areas and annotating the framework as we went. There was also another consultation framework that I used. This looks a lot like the diagram I showed you earlier, but a bit more fun. And there were questions that accompanied each stage that I used to structure the discussion. You can see those there. And that's what it looked like when it had been used, just to give you an idea. Just to give you a quick idea of what phase 2 looked like as well. I had initial EP focus groups discussing the main ideas of the approach. The consultation phase stage, where I had 9 consultations across the 2 schools. School staff focus group reflecting on the experiences of the consultations. And finally, a follow-up EP focus group to discuss the sort of emerging findings and help me reflect on them. I used a thematic approach and brought together all those different sources of data. So I had transcripts from the school staff, transcripts from the EPs, and documents produced during the consultations, and ended up with 6 overall themes. And I presented in this way just so you can see how it was distributed across the different sources of data. This is the part I'm not sure I've got that much time for, but I'm going to try and run through the themes very quickly. So this theme describes the different ways that participants talked about working with education experts or external agencies that was part of working to promote inclusion. So sometimes this was characterized as being dictated to, and other times collaborated with. Teachers in general found the capabilities consultations to be largely a collaborative experience, and contrasted this with other more dictatorial, if you like, interactions with experts. This theme describes the various ways that the consultation approach focused on the individual child. Many of these were positive and helpful and sort of strengths of the approach, such as focusing on strengths or individualized goals, but there were also some challenges. So balancing individual needs and the needs of the whole class group. This really brought up that challenge for teachers, or this criticism that maybe the approach is quite individualistic by focusing just on the individual and not on group level concerns. This theme, being inclusive, describes the various ways that inclusive professional practice was characterized in some essential aspects of trying to be inclusive. So whether that's data or the role of interventions or the emotional demands of inclusive classrooms on teachers. And EPs, the managing opposing views relates more to EPs, and they felt that their role was very much about managing people's different and sometimes opposing perspectives on what disability is or the definition of what inclusion should be. These inclusion factors relate to the concept of conversion factors and contain the different sub-themes that relate to those different types of factors that are associated with promoting or not promoting inclusion that sort of emerge from the consultation approach. And the difficult issue of choice. This relates to the role of choice played in the approach, and quite a lot of challenges around how we make sense of choice, especially in relation to children. And this theme just describes some practical implementation issues that emerged mainly from the EPs. I've summarised the findings here. Research question was just how you apply this approach in consultation practice. Broadly, the supporting capabilities framework, consultation framework, provides a structured problem-solving approach. And the capabilities profile provided me with a way of incorporating children's views into a consultation model. Research question 2, how does this sort of consultation, a capabilities approach to consultation, contribute to inclusion? Well, it helped to bring about a shift in thinking, both about, on the part of the teachers, both about the individual child, but also about the individualness of all children in their class. That was something they spoke about, that they started to think differently about everyone and not just the child we spoke about. It helped to, as I've mentioned, facilitate a sense of a collaborative working relationship, addressing some of the power dynamics inherent in this kind of expert advice-giving role. Allowed for the consideration of personal, social, environmental, and structural factors influence inclusion, all within the same framework, or within the same model. EPs linked it with existing uses of psychology and inclusive education, but there were some barriers and sort of points for further development, and helped both school staff and EPs to manage some of the challenges they experienced of being inclusive. I realise I've got 5 seconds, but just to show you these 2 slides, Based on the outcomes, I've then further developed the original proposed versions of the consultation framework, and this gives you an idea of how they look. So on the left, there's a simplified, more question-based version of the supporting capabilities framework. And on the right, you can see a version of the capabilities profile, which I've made, which is kind of editable and is accompanied by a pupil voice toolkit, which looks a bit like this. This pupil voice toolkit sets out, runs according to roughly the same stages I used in phase 1 of the study, and is intended as a resource for other EPs to use to create a bespoke version of the capabilities profile for an individual school as part of a longer term working relationship between an EP and a school. Thank you.